Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm delighted to participate in this debate, although I wish it weren't necessary. But I want to begin by thanking the Honourable Member for Stoke-on-Trent North for bringing this debate forward and for her comprehensive opening speech. The speeches we've heard today, of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, show that there are common concerns across the United Kingdom by the stampede of the banks out of our communities, and we're all very concerned about that. And of course we've had the announcement of yet more bank closures by RBS, with a further 62 branches closing in Scotland. Now 10 have been reprieved for the moment following negotiations with the SNP leadership. And I agree that this doesn't go far enough. It certainly doesn't in a moment. It certainly doesn't do anything for my constituency, Madam Chair, but I am not mean-spirited enough to not recognise when progress is made. The Honourable Member for Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk, I know, Madam Deputy Speaker, that he would rather cut his head off than give the SNP any credit for anything. But I really do think that he really, on this case, should be a bit more gracious. Because although he said, Madam Deputy Speaker, that this was a result of concerns expressed by all parties, the fact is that round that negotiating table was the SNP and RBS, nobody else. So I really do think that the Honourable Member might perhaps put that in his pipe and smoke it. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will not give way. You've put the boot in, the boot's been put in back, and we'll leave it at that. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would be disturbed if the fact that the UK Government, despite being the major shareholder in RBS, has not lifted a finger. Now, he can chunter from a sedentary position, driven by his hatred of the SNP and his lack of concern for banking communities who have been offered a reprieve. It really is quite sad, Madam Deputy Speaker. But it's concerning that the UK Government, despite the taxpayer being the major shareholder in RBS, has not lifted a single finger to encourage or to force RBS to pause this closure programme and carry out impact assessments or consultations with the communities affected.
Order. I think the Honourable Lady has said she's not giving way. She's got a short amount of time to speak. Patricia Gibson.
Madam Deputy Speaker. So it's disappointing that the UK Government, on behalf of the taxpayer, hasn't lifted a single finger to do anything to protect communities affected by these bank closures. And whilst I am disturbed that the UK Government wasn't consulted about these closures as the major shareholder either, I think that's deeply unfortunate and raises a lot of questions. And I am pleased, other members may not be, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I am pleased for those communities whose banks have been reprieved, but it does nothing for my own constituents in North Ayrshire and Arran, who still face the prospect of losing 3 banks in Saltcoats, Kilbirnie and Kilwinning. Of course, vowing not to close the last bank in town is something which this bank has now sought to disassociate itself from. It sounded good at the time, I think, to the PR companies, but it hasn't bothered to continue. No, I will not give way. The Honourable Member has been extremely rude, driven, Madam Deputy Speaker, as I've said, not by concern about banking communities, but by his hatred of the SNP, which really is rather pathetic. Now, it sounded good to the RBS when they said that they would not close the last bank in town, but that, of course, has been long abandoned. And as a result, Madam Deputy Speaker, the town of Kilwinning in my constituency, a town of around 16,000 people, now faces the prospect of losing its last bank. And what we have seen this week is that RBS is not deaf to the uproar these closures have given rise to. Their public image lies in tatters. But the bank has opened the door an inch to reprieve some branches, and myself and SNP activists who have been out every weekend, Saturdays and Sundays since after Christmas, collecting parliamentary petition signatures to save our banks, having already collected thousands of signatures, we now propose, Madam Deputy Speaker, to run at the door that has been slightly opened and kick it open wide to save our branches. We will not be giving up in our quest to save our banks. We bailed out the banks, and it's now time they live up to their moral obligation to our communities. Now, in my own constituency, if these closures go ahead, it will bring the number of towns with no bank to 6. The towns of Dalry, Stevenston, West Kilbride, Ardrossan and Beith no longer have a bank, and now, shortly it seems, RBS intend to add Kilwinning to that list. And I honestly don't think any other constituency in the United Kingdom has been so adversely, so cruelly hit. Indeed, the banks are stampeding out of Ayrshire at an alarming, a staggering rate. Now, I know that people today have talked about post offices picking up the slack, but the range of services that banks provide are not always available in post offices, and having a corner at the back of a Spar supermarket is no compensation for customers who will get no privacy and not the same level of services. And of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, it was only 10 short years ago when it was our post offices that were under attack and stampeding out of our towns. I cannot overstate, Madam Deputy Speaker, the sense of anger, the sense of betrayal felt by these communities and similarly affected communities across the United Kingdom. From a bank which has been bailed out by the taxpayer to secure its very survival due to its own incompetence, a bank that is still 73% owned by the taxpayer is a bitter pill to swallow indeed. And this pill is made all the more bitter to swallow, Madam Deputy Speaker, by the fact that last year this very bank paid £16 million in bonuses. The culture of excessive bonuses lives on whilst the customer and the taxpayer continue to suffer. The UK Government retains all legislative and regulatory powers in respect of financial services. So the UK Government does indeed have the authority to call a halt, a pause to this devastating round of closures, whilst banks, stakeholders and the UK and Scottish Governments consider how best to take account of the obligation to banking customers and our communities. And whatever the banks may say, they do have an obligation to our communities, a service obligation, a financial obligation, and I would argue a moral obligation. And let's be clear about what these bank closures mean. They mean that the affected communities no longer have access to day-to-day essential banking services. It means that my constituents in Kilbirnie must undertake a round trip of 18.8 miles to access their new so-called local bank. Many of them, most of them I would suggest, relying on public transport to do so. It means RBS customers in Saltcoats are being directed to the next RBS, which is a round trip of 12.8 miles away, and Kilwinning customers are being asked to undertake a round trip of 6.8 miles to visit their new local branch. And all of this is before you even get to the impact on local businesses who are increasingly finding themselves without access to night safes. If they cannot bank their takings at the end of the business day, they must incur an extra insurance charge for keeping the cash overnight, with all the security implications that that creates. And these small businesses are the backbone of our communities and our local economies. Make no mistake, to leave a town with no bank is financial and social exclusion. I've been told by RBS that the closures in my constituency for Kilwinning, Saltcoats and Kilbirnie will be replaced by mobile banks. That's not what constituents want. These mobile banks are not reliable and are not disability compliant and a poor substitute for the presence of a bank in our towns. And we will continue to fight these closures. We will continue with our parliamentary petition signatures, because RBS must understand that the people of North Ayrshire and Arran, the people of Kilwinning, Saltcoats and Kilbirnie will not sit quietly and take the poor treatment that's been offered out to them. And I urge the Minister to use all the means at his disposal as the majority shareholder on behalf of us, the taxpayer, to sort this matter out and order the banks to pause, consult with communities and do the right thing. This matter, Madam Deputy Speaker, will not go away.